Dudes and dudettes, how are you guys? This is Chazzy and welcome back to another edition of Chazzy's Top 10. I have not done one of these in a very long time. It's been probably well over 100 videos since my last one a long time ago, it's been a while. And to those of you who are new to this format, I know this is your first time watching a Chazzy's Top 10 video, let me just get a few disclaimers out of the way before I start, okay? These top 10s are not necessarily in chronological order. I don't do the traditional top 10 in the sense that I do from the 10th all the way to the first. I actually start off in the opposite way. I start off from my first one, my most favorite one, and then I just go all the way down, And also, these are very, very, very heavily opinionated, I draw a lot from my own personal opinions. So when I say, for example, that I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite movies ever, or rather the top 10 best movies ever, they are my top 10 favorites, okay? So I take more into consideration my own personal opinions, and you guys should too. So this might not be a very popular list, but I will say again, these are my personal top 10 favorites, okay? So let's just get that out of the way so you guys don't berate me in the comments later, okay? But anyway, today I'm going to be talking about what I consider to be my top 10 favorite movies of all time and what I would consider to be the best, It was really hard to make this video, guys. It's so hard to come up with the list because I love movies. I am a huge cinema buff, I love watching movies, and it was really difficult to come up with just 10 for this list here. But I'm gonna try anyway, okay? And also, just a few tidbits of info. I have excluded movies that are part of a bigger franchise like Star Wars and Harry Potter because I kind of love all of them, so it would be really weird to just choose one, So the vast majority are just, standalone pieces, And some of them are much more modern. There are very few movies that are older, but then again, I am drawing much more from my own generation, So the ones that have had a bigger impact on me. So, somebody who's older than me might definitely have a different opinion, but and I'm going to try to not have an honorable mentions tab at the end because usually that makes these videos longer than they should be already, And also I will be excluding any animated features like Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, because if I don't, it's gonna be really freaking hard. I might make a separate list video in the future about that, but I mean, come on, guys. If I had to include animated movies too, it would be really hard. But anyway, so now that I got some of those rules out of the way, let's begin, huh? Let's start off with what I consider to be my most favorite movie of all time, at least at the time of recording this video, okay? Interstellar. I'm pretty sure you guys know at this point what Interstellar is, even if you haven't watched it at any point in your life yet, but it is a really, really terrific movie, And the reason I love it so much is because I love space, Anything having to do with astronomy and studying celestial bodies, and anything involving space travel. I love playing games like Mass Effect, for example, I used to play a little bit of Dead Space, but that's a little bit of horror. It's not really too much the same, but the story with Interstellar, kind of like Stanley Kubrick's original 2001: A Space Odyssey, it explores people going into space and trying to colonize a different planet, because in Interstellar, the Earth as we know it is starting to become very polluted and people are going to die out, they're going to go extinct. So a group of astronauts played by Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway and a few others, they actually travel, they go through a wormhole and go to a different planet and a different solar system to try to see if they can find habitable planets for humans, so they can eventually migrate there. But a few issues start to happen. They play a lot around with the concept of time travel and how for example, an hour on one planet can correspond to 7 years on Earth, which is something that really rattles my brain. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but hey, I reviewed this movie a long time ago on this channel, back before Cinema Chazzy was even a format here, and I actually like it a lot, They play around with the concept of quantum physics and science and more advanced, mathematics, but they kind of dumb it down for people like us, in a way that we can actually understand, us average citizens who don't have a degree in physics and whatnot. But I think that the way that they portrayed space travel is really good, and the movie was actually very well acclaimed because of this, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson actually said it was really good, There was a lot of support from the scientific community, so, and they tell a story that was really unique, How the characters see their family growing. You know, the main character sees his family growing from far away, you know. Then eventually he goes into a black hole. It's really freaking crazy, you know. They play around with the Tesseract, you know, a different dimension that we can't see, you know. The way that I'm describing it might make it sound really complicated, but it's actually pretty okay. You know, it's a very good movie, one of my favorites, and I could possibly be the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life because it's just amazing. But then again, the reason it's so high up on my list is because I love space. Somebody who doesn't love space might not enjoy it too much, but me personally, I think it's really freaking awesome. You know, it was released back in 2014. Don't know if I already said that, but I actually caught it in theaters, you know, on opening night, and it was just amazing. Oh my god, these goddamn motorcycle assholes. But anyway, yes, first on the list is Interstellar. I don't remember if it got any awards, you know, but it definitely deserved them if it didn't, you know. So, and if you guys still haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. Amazing cinematography, you know, editing, soundtrack, and really good pacing too. Pretty long movie, but I think it's really bearable. You know, it's really cool to see them exploring different harsh conditions. So yeah, it's really awesome. Next, we have one of the biggest classics in all cinematic history, and by one of my favorite directors of all time, Steven Spielberg, Jurassic Park. Now, here's the thing. I have a very, very strong attachment to dinosaurs and prehistoric animals in general because when I was a kid, I used to be obsessed with them. I used to love dinosaurs. I really, really did. You know, I recorded a video talking about that some time ago, and I really, really liked them a lot. I used to like looking at photos and researching them, you know. When I started to use the internet as a kid, I would always research, you know, look them up and try to see what else I could find. I thought it was really cool, you know. And Jurassic Park was a groundbreaking movie in cinema because of the technology used, the CGI, you know, but also great practical effects, the story that was told that was actually based on the book by Michael Crichton, you know, which was much more brutal than the movie. So the idea of creating a theme park with just prehistoric animals, dinosaurs, cloned from the DNA of frogs, to me is brilliant, you know. It is a timeless story that I don't think will ever be replicated. There were a few sequels and I do like all of them, but let's be real, the original is something special. I love Jurassic World. I was considering putting Jurassic World on this list, you know, but I think that nothing can beat the original, man. The story, the characters, you know, and the soundtrack for the first time that we heard it, that later became iconic by John Williams, you know. So I think that the first Jurassic Park was something really special. I have played on my channel Jurassic World Evolution if you guys want to go check it out later, you know. And it was really nostalgic to me personally because I love dinosaur movies and content in general. And to me, Jurassic Park will always be one of the best movies. And I talked about Spielberg, right? I'm a really big fan of Steven Spielberg. I'm a very big fan of his, you know. I love his work. And I also, I think that the best thing he created was Jurassic Park, but I am also a fan of Jaws, you know. I've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but I didn't really enjoy it too much. But in general, I think that a lot of his work really encompasses how you should make a movie, you know. And when he made Jurassic Park, he was definitely ahead of his time, you know. And I'm really glad that the movie is so it's still very relative today despite being so old. You know, it came out in 1993, you know, 1 year after I was born. It's actually one of the first movies I have ever seen, if I'm not mistaken. And since I used to be scared, of course, but after a while I started to really like dinosaurs, and the original Jurassic Park had a lot of influence on that. Amazing special effects that age very well. They look better today than the Jurassic World movies do, you know, and that's really saying something. And the story was really well fleshed out, you know, the character development, everything was just amazing in that movie, you know. And I mean, you have the original theme song, the soundtrack glued to your mind, you know, you can't deny that. So Jurassic Park will always be a timeless classic to me, you know, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you can agree. Okay, next we have something a little more basic, you know, not too many practical effects, but still one of the best movies I have ever seen in my entire life, the original Karate Kid. Now, the reason that I say original is because there was a remake in 2010, but I'm talking about the actual 1984 one, the one that started it all, you know? The Karate Kid movies, you know, all of them except for the fourth one, I think it kind of sucks, but the first three that actually follow Daniel LaRusso are really, really cool. They're really fun to watch. You know, I love them so much, but the first one will always be the most immortal, you know? There was a recent TV series called Cobra Kai that's actually streaming right now on Netflix. You guys can go watch it. I've seen it like 3 or 4 times already. I will never get bored of that show. I love it so much. And the 4th season might be coming out soon, either this year or maybe the beginning of next year. But the point is that the original Karate Kid told a very timeless story about a kid who moves to a new city. You know, he makes some friends, but he's also bullied. He falls in love with a girl, they date, you know, and there's some tension. And then he meets a karate mentor who teaches him how to defend himself, you know, and eventually it starts to get bigger and bigger. They go to a tournament, they win, you know, he trains, and eventually it becomes something more about honor and glory, you know, than just a trophy. So it's about him facing his fears, you know, when taking on the bullies that he actually was afraid of before. So I can watch that movie 10 times in a row and I will never get bored of it, you know. The sequel where they go to Okinawa is just as good, you know. Could be even better depending on how you watch it. You know, I think it's one of the best sequels in movie history. You know, because usually sequels suck, but in this case, it was just as good, if not even better than the original. The third one was a little meh, but the first 2 Karate Kid movies I think are just 2 timeless classics that I will never get bored of watching. And the first one, you know, the soundtrack, you know, the whole "You're the best around," you know, by Joe Esposito, you know, oh my God, man. It's so freaking crazy. The characters, you know, Daniel, Johnny, Ali, Mr. Miyagi, you know, everybody is so, like, they transcend generations, you know. I mean, I didn't grow up in the 80s, but I kind of feel a nostalgia because I really love those movies. You know, we're also talking about Back to the Future and some other horror movies too, you know. So to me, it will always be the best, you know. And I was actually, like, I could have put the first Back to the Future or the first Karate Kid here in this slot, but the Karate Kid will always be the best because, hey, I was a martial artist at one point in my life as well. So, and even though the choreography doesn't age too well sometimes, you know, it still looks really well for back in the 80s, you know. So I think that everything was just amazing. It is just a flawless freaking movie all around, man. I might review it individually later for Cinema Chazzy, but for now I'm just gonna maintain it here on this list. And by the way, go check out Cobra Kai on Netflix if you still haven't, because it's definitely worth it. Next, we have another martial arts movie, but it is a little bit older than the Karate Kid by just about a decade or so. Enter the Dragon. Okay, so it might be a little obvious at this point if you guys have watched this channel for a while, but I am a huge Bruce Lee fan. I still love him a lot, you know, but I used to be a martial artist, so my connection to him used to be much stronger, you know, the admiration is still there, and Enter the Dragon is actually really special. I love all of his movies, you know, they're actually really good, and I would actually go on to say that Way of the Dragon that he did with Chuck Norris was actually one of his most, probably his most iconic, you know, for that fight scene alone. But I still think that Enter the Dragon deserves a spot on this list because it is iconic, because it was the very last movie that Lee did before he unfortunately died the same year, you know. Now, the thing with Bruce Lee is that he was a true martial artist. He was a really good fighter, and he was able to portray that in the movies that he did, you know. So I think that Enter the Dragon was his, for one thing, it was his transition into Hollywood, you know. It catapulted him to international stardom, you know. It was his first movie done with Warner Bros. So he was on his way to becoming an international movie star, you know. And if he hadn't passed away, then he would definitely be one of the most famous actors in all of Hollywood still to this day if he was still alive. He would have probably been in his 60s or 70s and still doing martial arts movies. And he was also the founder of Jeet Kune Do, which he embodied into the movie, you know. He plays a character who goes to an island to try to infiltrate it and see what's been going on, because there's some drug activity there disguised under a martial arts tournament, you know. So he goes there because he's actually going after a former monk who turned into a drug lord, you know, and disgraced the temple. And it shows Bruce Lee in his prime, dude, in his best, you know. And it was really crazy because he had such a flair about him, you know. Like, of course, the movie did not age too well in some departments, you know. Like, when it comes to combat, everyone sucks except Bruce Lee. It's like everyone is so terrible at fighting except for Lee. Like, he was the only character who made made the fighting actually look realistic, you know. And the scene where he kicks Robert Wall in the chest and sends him backwards, you know, and actually breaks the arms of the guy who catches him behind him, you know, it's really freaking crazy. You know, there was some behind the scenes fact where he cut his hand, you know, then he had to gash it up, but you know, I think that Enter the Dragon, because of its cinematic pacing, you know, and also the soundtrack, you know, the timeless theme that plays throughout, you know, at the beginning, and also Bruce Lee speaking English for the very first time on camera, because he always did his movies in his native Cantonese, you know. So the first time of him speaking English, you know, to an international audience, that was really cool. He was allegedly really nervous, you know, but anyway, the movie itself, the story is really good. The fight choreography, the characters, you know, they have a lot of really good chemistry, and it was really good to finally see Bruce Lee take on something away from China, you know. So to me, this movie will always be, I think it is preserved, and if it's not, it should be preserved in the National Cinema Library, or whatever that's called, because it is definitely culturally significant in my book. One of the best martial arts movies of all time, bar none. Fun fact, Jackie Chan started his career as a stunt double on the movie, not a stunt double, but he played one of the guards in the movie who was killed by Bruce Lee's character, so he can brag about that. He was killed by Bruce Lee. But yeah, man. Enter the frickin' Dragon. Okay, next we have something a little bit more recent, you know, and I would go on to say one of the most financially successful movies of all time, Titanic. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys know at this point that this is probably James Cameron's biggest hit of his entire career. You could argue that Avatar was just as good, you know, it might have even grossed more money, but nothing can come close to Titanic, man. You know, because it's one thing to make a movie that is pretty much half animated, you know, it's CGI, but this one is different because it's one of the longest movies I've ever seen in my entire life. It's probably about 3 hours or so, and it released in 1997, so right then when CGI was starting to become a thing, you know, a few years earlier we had Jurassic Park, like I said before, you know, so like they were still trying to come up with CGI, you know, they were still trying to, in the same decade, we had some really crappy movies like Deep Blue Sea, which I do like, but still the CGI really did not age too well. And now the thing with James Cameron's Titanic is that it is based on a true story. You guys know that it actually did happen, but I love the way that he took something historical, something that actually happened, and he tweaked it in a way to make it as like, to have like an actual love story, almost like a Romeo and Juliet kind of thing, you know, but in a more modern day setting, at least modern back then, you know. So the timeless love story of Jack and Rose, you know, nothing on the planet could keep them apart each. So and then as the movie goes on, everything about the movie is pretty much pitch perfect, you know. We have Celine Dion doing the soundtrack, you know, with her My Heart Will Go On, you know, the song that was probably became the most popular radio song, you know, throughout the decade when the movie came out, you know. It received so many different awards, so many nominations, and it won a bunch of Oscars, you know, very well deservedly, and it established James Cameron as a directing mogul, you know, and he actually dived to the wreck of the Titanic either before or after the movie came out, I don't know, but he actually did dive down there. So it actually gave him inspiration for the movie, so it might have happened before. And the movie, despite being so long, is very, very well paced. It never feels too rushed or too slow. Everything is just perfect. And people who watch Titanic, I'm sure you guys can agree that it doesn't really feel like you're watching 3 hours of a movie, because it goes by really fast. And it, especially when things start to go wrong, you know, the characters, you know, start, you know, there starts to be a lot of conflict here with the classes, you know, and it shows a very accurate depiction of what it was like back then, you know, in the early 1900s, you know, segregation and people who were poor and rich, you know, this and that, a lot of division, you know. The conflict is very tangible, you know, certain characters become antagonists and antagonists, you know, and we are always rooting for Jack and Rose to stay together, and unfortunately it doesn't happen, because even though they do escape the sinking ship, you know, Jack unfortunately dies, he perishes, freezes to death in the ocean. There's a lot of theories going around that there actually was room for both of them on the door, you know, but that's a topic for another video. And also the way that they depicted the Titanic actually hitting the iceberg and sinking was amazing, you know, one of the best sequences in all of movie history, because that was just really well done, man. Very well shot, very well edited, very well directed. To me, it was just amazing, and I love that sequence so much. So yes, Titanic will definitely go down in history as one of the best movies of all time, even if it's not the highest grossing at this point. I'm pretty sure it was surpassed by Avengers Endgame by quite a margin. But yeah, man, Titanic. Okay, next we have the first horror movie on this list, and definitely without a doubt one of my favorites ever. Actually, no, my actual favorite because it made it onto this list. The Conjuring.
Bathsheba! By the power of God, I condemn you back to hell!
There's something really special about a horror movie that is based on true facts, you know? Something actually really happened and then it was adapted into a Hollywood screenplay and made into a movie. In this case, it was directed by James Wan, you know, my buddy, the creepy puppet. I really love that guy. It was released in 2013 and I actually managed to watch it in the movie theater when it released on opening weekend. And it was really freaky, you know, but it was a different kind of freaky. It was a different horror movie that I had seen before, you know, and I have reviewed it here on this channel specifically, you know, and the thing is that I don't know, man, The Conjuring is different than other horror movies because it is done completely different. You know, like the filmmaking is different, you know, the direction, you know, and the way that they shoot it and edit it, you know, and the tension. They really create a lot of tension without the need of cheap jump scares. It's a horror movie, so of course there are a lot of jump scares, but none of them feel really cheap, you know. It's like they happen at the exact right time, you know. And sometimes even when you expect the jump scare to happen, it still scares the hell out of you. So that to me is a movie that is very well done, you know. In my opinion, The Conjuring is one of the best I've ever seen, you know. Now the sequels are good too. It was a little hard to decide because I actually personally prefer the sequel a little more, but I still decided to go with the first one because it just makes more sense. It was the beginning of everything, you know. He wasn't expecting there to have so much success and blow up the way it did with its own universe and spin-offs. So the first one is definitely something special, you know, based on the Parent Family in 1971, and the way that they encompassed the story was really, really well done in my opinion, you know. A very good horror movie, excellent to watch by yourself at night, but it's good to watch with somebody else, you know. First time I saw it, I went with a buddy of mine. We were scared crapless, you know, but it was really good too. The casting was really well done. Everybody acted really well. We have Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga playing the Warrens, you know, Ed and Lorraine Warren, who I think was a very good fit for each other. You know, they were two really well cast actors, you know, in the role. So to me, it was amazing. Very, very well done in my honest opinion. And to me, The Conjuring will always be one of the best horror movies, you know, in history. And just the way that they incorporate elements, you know, like from older movies, but also use some new creative techniques like the one-shots that James Wan does in all of his movies now, I think is really cool. It's become a staple of his work, you know, and telling the story of Bathsheba, demonic possession, you know. There are a few plot holes because, I mean, come on, if you guys watch a channel like Cinema Sins, you're going to know how exactly it works, but still, it's a very enjoyable movie and just scary enough to make you not sleep well at night the first time you watch it. But I can watch it a dozen times because I love it at this point, but I honestly think it's one of the best I have ever seen, and hopefully you guys agree. And next we have another classic by the great Steven Spielberg, Jaws.
Smile, you son of a...
When this movie was released back in 1975, nobody really expected it to blow up the way that it did, you know, because it became so culturally significant. It became a staple of cinema, you know, because so many other filmmakers after Spielberg used this movie for inspiration, you know. It became famous for a number of things. One of them is the element of surprise, you know. It is making the audience imagine something that's not really there, you know, because in case you guys don't know, if you guys have never seen the movie, the shark looks like a piece of crap. You know, it was nicknamed Bruce. You know, they had a bunch of different models, but the main shark itself looked so freaking crappy. You know, it looked so damn fake. You know, and I can understand because we're talking about the mid-70s, so special effects weren't really as good as they are today. You can watch a movie like The Meg, for example, and the shark obviously looks much more realistic, but the thing with Steven Spielberg's movie is that it was really special because throughout much of the movie you don't even see the shark, you know? I mean, you know it's there. You know, everything around you suggests that it's there. The camera movement, the people reacting, the scary music, which was also made by John Williams, who did the Jurassic Park soundtrack. You know, John Williams is a master of his craft, man. So because of that, there was a lot of element that was a lot of tension and suspense that was being built, you know, a shark going around a little town and eating a bunch of people at random with no warning, you know, and then they go out and hunt it, they try to find it, and then at the end, when they finally go out to sea and look for the shark and it finally comes out, you're like, wow, that is scary. It sucks, you know, but I think that back then it made a much bigger result. It had a much more impressionable effect on people than today. You watch a movie like Jaws today, you kind of cringe at the shark, but the storytelling elements are really what sell this piece, you know, because to me it was very, very well fleshed out. You know, the details, the characters, some of them are playing blocks of wood, but then again, we're talking about the 70s, you know, and the main characters, I forgot all of their names, but it was, we had Richard Dreyfuss and Rob Schneider and the other guy whose name I always forget, but screw him, the guy who played Quincy, I always forget his name. But the point is that they had really good chemistry together, you know. Unfortunately, I think two of them have passed away already. I think only Richard is still alive, but they have never had any amount of success close to what they had in Jaws, and when they finally confront the shark, it's the ultimate battle of man versus beast, you know. And then there is the iconic ending where Sheriff Rhodey, he throws an air tank into the shark's mouth and shoots it from far away and blows it up, which I think was disproven by Mythbusters or something that said it's not even possible to happen. But the point is that it is a really iconic scene, you know. And to me, because I love sharks, I like these kinds of movies, Jaws will go down in history as one of the best, you know, and I do believe it is preserved, you know, in the cinematic library, you know, in America's film library. There were a few sequels and they all sucked. Big surprise there. They're all terrible as hell. But still, I do think that the first one was something special, man. You just can't you can't hold a candle to the first Jaws, you know. And it established Spielberg as already one of the greatest filmmakers in the world by that time, you know. So yeah, and also made a lot of people afraid to go in the water, myself included. Okay, next we have a much more recent movie, you know, one that is a staple of my generation, one of my favorites ever, and might not be a very well, and how can I say, it might be a little controversial to put this movie on a list of the top 10 best, but it's still my opinion, Coach Carter.
Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it, okay?
Okay. Okay, I got you.
What's wrong?
Come on. Get back with us now. Come on.
I can't believe they shot.
Just come inside now, all right?
This, to me, is Samuel Jackson's finest piece of work in his entire career. It is the best movie he's ever done, and it's exactly because it's so realistic, you know? It is also based on a true story. It did really happen. Coach Carter was an actual real high school coach, you know, in a very shady neighborhood. You know, I do believe it was in the same district of Richmond, you know, but anyway, the point is that it is a very amazing coming-of-age story that tells the story of a group of young men on the basketball team and at a school, but they also have really complicated lives, you know, with gangs and violence and drugs and money, you know, and they're trying really hard to just play the game they love. But Coach Carter, he instills a lot of different rules in him that actually seems a little bit unfair to some of them, you know. He's very, very strict and rigid, you know, and he imposes the famous lockout in '99 where he bans the team from playing until they get their grades up, which is controversial in and out of itself, but you can't deny that it worked. You know, it's a way for you to, you know, motivate the students to pursue academic careers outside of the sport, you know, that they play. So, and I actually did a review about this movie itself, you know, by itself some time ago, and it really did work. The students got their grades up, they played basketball, but they also got scholarships, you know, so it was one of the best stories I have ever seen in my entire life, and I loved it so much. And to me, Coach Carter will always be a timeless classic of my generation, you know, and exactly because of this, because, I mean, it's really easy for you to take a movie like, I don't know, a superhero movie like the Marvel or the DC movies and put them up there, you know, Star Wars and all of that stuff because of the special effects. But I like movies that are more grounded in realism because they're easier to follow. I mean, yes, I do love sci-fi, fantasy, science, and all those really crazy thrillers, you know, but at the end of the day, it's the movies that are more realistic that impress me the most, you know. So I actually have many of the movies on this list are more realistic, you know, they follow this category because it just makes it easier for you to relate to the characters, you know. I mean, who can you relate to more, Coach Carter or, you know, Nick Fury? So, you know, two Samuel Jackson characters there. So in my opinion, Coach Carter is good because of this, you know, a very solid soundtrack, you know, with some hip hop and rap vibes, you know. And then we've got some really accurate depictions of gang life, you know, how brutal it can be, and studying in a school like Richmond, you know, which is they don't really graduate too many of their students, so you can see the students' struggles as they go through it, you know, the conflict and the character development as they grow, because slowly they start to mature into young men, you know. It's like the character himself said, Coach Carter, I came here to train boys and you became men. One of the most iconic lines ever, man, you know. And Samuel Jackson fits like a glove in any role, any movie he tries to tackle. So to me, it is one of the most realistic movies here on this list, because it's so grounded, you know. I just love it so much, man. The humility of it, you know, the simplicity of how this movie was made, to me, is just amazing. Awesome cinematic pacing, cinematography as well. Everything was really, really well done, and I will never get bored of Coach Carter. And I actually like basketball now, and one of the reasons was Coach Carter. Got me into the sport, you know. I'm an NBA fan now, so yeah. Next, we have one of the most dramatic movies I have ever seen in my entire life, that is also based on something that actually happened, that was actually really tragic and disastrous: The Impossible. This movie here is based on the Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004 that claimed a lot of lives. You know, it was just one of the worst disasters, well, the worst natural disasters, you know, in human history. And it was something that was actually really scary when you stop to think about it, you know, because I have the habit of watching movies and putting myself in the characters' places sometimes, you know, so I can imagine how terrifying it must have been to go through something like this, you know. And Ewan McGregor and Naomi Watts, they played their characters so well. It was freaking crazy, you know. We had a really young Tom Holland, you know, our Spider-Man today in Hollywood, a little pipsqueak, you know, with his little brothers and all that. So it's about a family that goes, you know, to they go to damn it, sorry about that, guys. I have a little cheat sheet here that I want to use so I don't give you guys the wrong information. It actually happened in Indonesia. Okay, it happened in Sumatra, Indonesia, reaching Indian plate, this and that. I just wanted to make sure I was going to give you guys the right information there, because in my head it was like in Thailand or something. But anyway, so trying to imagine being there, you know, right in the middle of it when you're just enjoying your vacation, then a huge tsunami comes in and sweeps everything away after an earthquake. It was really freaking scary, you know, and the movie shows this in full detail, you know. I don't know who the director was, but let's just say he didn't pull any punches, you know. We do see a lot of graphic imagery, you know, there's a lot of blood, very strong injuries, you know, which is probably just as bad, you know, but or maybe not as bad as what happened in real life. Maybe they did bog it down a little bit and we just didn't see it, you know, but it was really crazy, guys. It was really crazy, you know, and this movie is just freaking nuts because it shows you, there are a few scenes that show the characters being swung around by the water like rag dolls, a bunch of stuff crashing into them, you know, we see a lot of death and destruction, you know, but what really sells this movie to me, in my opinion, is the beginning. The end, the opposite. So the end of the movie is just amazing because of the characters reuniting with each other. You know, so I mean, well, I think that this scene really deserves a mention because, man, it is one of the few scenes, you know, in cinema history that made me cry. And I cry every single time I see it, no matter how many times I watch it. If I rewind it 5 times, I will cry 5 times, you know, all at once, because seeing them, the father, you know, and the 3 sons coming together is just so freaking crazy, man. Screaming out each other's names and then hugging each other and crying. I mean, you have to have a heart of ice not to cry during this scene, you know. Few movies have had this effect on me. One of them was, of course, Marley and Me, but come on, that's just obvious. Marley and Me, come on, that's not even fair. But I honestly think that The Impossible, because of its very realistic depiction of something that actually did happen, you know, I think it deserves a mention on this list, you know. And also The Day After Tomorrow, 2012. There are other disaster movies, but I actually really love The Day After Tomorrow, and I was considering putting it in the place of this one here, but it's not exactly real. I mean, it is realistic, but I think that they kind of They exaggerated a few moments, you know, even though it is much more grounded than 2012, for example. But because The Impossible is based on something that actually happened, there was an actual real life basis for it, and the way that it was done was amazing, you know. Whoever the hell directed this movie, the production team, everybody involved, they really I don't know if this movie won any awards, but it really deserved at least one Oscar, man, you know, or two, because it was so well made. They really captured the environment of a post-destruction land, you know. So, and this was one of the deadliest earthquakes in history, so it was really freaking crazy. It was really freaking crazy. So to me, I can't remember too much of the soundtrack, but forget the music, you know. The movie itself was freaking awesome. It was amazing, you know. One of the best pieces of work by Ewan McGregor, who played our beloved Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Star Wars movies, you know. Sometimes I forget he actually is British, wasn't just putting on an accent. But yeah, man, can't get enough of that one. If you guys have never seen it, I do believe it's on Netflix right now at the time of recording this video, so you guys can go and check it out, and I promise you, you will not regret it. This movie is just amazing, man. I'm almost crying right now just talking about it. Oh God, but yeah. And now last, but certainly not least, not by a long shot, the only war movie here on this list, and it was really hard to pick just one because I like war movies in general, Fury.
What are you doing? What do you want to do? You want to sit here?
We're gonna hold this
You want to sit
crossroad.
here, hold off ASS battalion?
No,
We
it's
ain't
not what I
gotta
want to
fight.
do, but it's what we're doing.
There's 5 of us.
Get
It's
your
300
fighting
of
position.
them.
Mount up. Fucking fighting positions when we ain't got to tell you how we gonna fight.
We got a cannon!
No, that don't make
Stop.
sense.
You don't know.
Stop! What are you doing?
Fury is a very complicated movie to watch because, I don't know, man. I mean, because maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me, but when you watch a war movie that has, you know, it takes place during back in World War II, and then you see Brad Pitt and Shia LaBeouf, you know, and John Bernthal. Actually, John was actually really well cast, but then you see Logan Lerman. You know, I think it was, I mean, you had a cast of really good actors, but it's very strange to see Brad Pitt playing like a war general with a very modern haircut, you know. It was really strange. But anyway, aside from that, aside from the questionable acting, I think that the movie was really well designed from the ground up, because it shows you what it was like back in World War II. You know, it's a group of a tank battalion, I think that's what they were called, trying to infiltrate enemy territory during World War II in some very specific missions, you know, and it shows you how it is inside the tank, you know. This movie was released in 2014, so to its credit, you know, there was a lot of very interesting imagery. They really did it. I don't think there was a lot of CGI. A movie like this usually has much more practical effects, but there were a few things that were a little disturbing and unsettling to watch, a lot of really graphic violence, but I think that it encompasses war in a very good way. I was considering putting American Sniper here in place of this one because I also like that movie a lot, but I don't know, man. I don't think it's just because American Sniper is very specific about one character, and Fury follows a group of characters, you know, and showing the battles, you know, the large scale battles, and also the ones coming into close quarters combat, you know, and at the end how every character dies except for the youngest, which is Logan Lerman, the most inexperienced, you know. He actually escapes, but to me it is just, it's bonkers, dude, because this movie is a wild adventure from the beginning to the end, you know, as most war movies are. And we have some seasoned actors, you know, playing the characters, and also some new ones coming in, so there is a lot of conflict. And I think that war movies, they always have a duty to tell you a little bit, something a little darker than what you would normally see on screen, you know. I think Fury is one of the best movies I've ever seen because of this, because it's not afraid to tell you the horrors of war the way that it really was, you know. We have the youngest character played by Logan Lerman, you know, flirting with the girl and actually having sex with her, you know, but then a few minutes later, after leaving, her house is bombarded and she dies. He sees her corpse, you know. The horrors of war are on full display in this movie, you know. The characters are merciless, you know. Very good cinematography. I like how everything is in a very kind of like an old-timey, almost a desaturated tone, you know, to show that war is not a colorful thing, you know, and showing ambushes and attacks, you know. And the characters really don't show mercy. They don't pull any punches when it comes to actually depicting how it was back then, you know. And out of all the movies on this list, it's the one that I've watched the least amount of times, I would say, and also the one that I haven't seen in the longest time, but I will definitely get around to watching it again, but it definitely deserves a spot here on this list. That goes without saying. And I honestly think that it goes down as one of the best horror movies ever. You could say, for example, Apocalypse Now or Saving Private Ryan or Platoon or something, but believe it or not, I haven't seen any of those movies yet. I will get around to them. Saving Private Ryan is on Netflix, but it's freaking almost 3 hours long. I don't have the patience for that. Apocalypse Netflix now. I don't know how I can get a hold of it. It's a really long movie, you know, but if I had watched any of those movies, maybe the ending of this list would have been a little different, but yeah, for now, it's just Fury, you know. Everybody acted really well. Like I said, veteran actors. We had Brad Pitt playing a really, really serious role. Probably one of the most serious roles of his entire career, you know. And it's just crazy, man. War movies in general, they tend to be very, very brutal. You know, they don't pull punches at all. And I will very likely review some war movies that I've seen in the past, you know, when I start playing something a little more related to it, huh? Give you guys a little teaser for what's to come there in my Chazzy Plays list, huh? So yeah. Really good movie. But anyway guys, that's it. I really hope you made it to the end, and if you did, you really like my content, because this video is probably going to be somewhere in the 40-minute mark, you know, something like that, as they usually are. These videos get really long, guys. It's really hard to shorten them because I like to talk a lot about the topics that I choose, you know. But I'm not going to do any honorable mentions here, you know. But like, you guys might be asking, why didn't he do any of the old movies, you know, the real classic ones like Citizen Kane or Casablanca or 2001: A Space Odyssey, Planet of the Apes, and all those really old movies? It's because I just don't really like them, to be honest, you know. I have seen some of them, but it's like I said at the beginning, guys, this is a very opinionated list, so it's more what I consider to be the best, not what the world considers to be the best, you know. But I hope you guys like it anyway, okay? I hope you don't disagree too strongly. Don't come at me with knives and pens in the comments, okay? This is just a place that I use to entertain you guys and give you guys some really cool content. So, but I would really like to hear your opinions about it, you know, so drop a comment or two below. Give this video a like if you happen to like it, you know, and also subscribe to my channel because I release videos every single day, sometimes one, sometimes two. You know, you never know when they're going to be coming out. So also hit the notification bell to know exactly what time of the day I'll be uploading, you know. I'm coming up on 500 videos very soon, and once I do, I'm going to be taking another break, but you know, it probably won't be for as long, or maybe it will be, I don't know. I'm just really tired, you know. And I really hope you guys enjoy this video because these take a really long time to make, you know. I do very few top 10s because they are so much work, you know, to research, record, and edit later and export, you know. So I really hope that my effort deserve some love, okay? So that's it, guys. This is Chazzy signing out for now, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Roll the outro screen.